What's up, guys? This is Jay from COI. So, I just wanted to talk about the coronavirus a little bit, and I do want to throw this out there. I am an expert, kind of, in politics. I know a lot more. That's my wheelhouse. Uh, this is not my wheelhouse, but there's been some stories that I've been seeing here and there, and they just haven't really been reported on, and for good reason, but I feel like it's something that we should all talk about. The other thing that I want to bring up is the apex we've in reopening. Uh, Everyone said the apex was this last weekend. I don't know if that's a fair assumption to make. The reason why they said that is because they believed we had reached the top, and what they're really measuring is how many new cases we have. And Saturday, I believe we hit 3,100 or 31,000, and then Sunday we started to go down, and that kind of showed what they were saying. That really matched what the model said. Even Monday was like 25,000. We're still down from that like 30,000 mark. Yesterday, though, we had 26,663 cases, and today, as of 9:45 p.m. Midwest time, we are at 28,473. So it looks like we're climbing back up there. I also want to bring this up because what's really important about this number and about all these models and is testing. Okay? And I don't think anyone did this on purpose. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. But our testing is also down in major laboratories by 15% this week. And it started ticking down last week. Now, why would that be happening? And I couldn't tell you why. I have no idea. In fact, if they're planning on reopening and they really want to pressure test the COVID-19, they would be testing the shit out of us. And they're actually dropping it. And again, I don't want to get conspiratorial, but it's almost like they don't want the numbers to go back up. And it's almost like they want to reopen early. Again, I don't know, and it's just assumptions I'm making. These are just numbers. These are just facts. That's all I'm saying. And it is true. You can look it up. That in major laboratories, they're testing about 15% less than they were last week and the week before then. On to the tests. Now, this is also important. So the antibody test that I'm sure you've heard quite a bit about may have been rushed a little quickly. They believe that they're not as accurate as they want them to be. But something else to keep in mind as we're moving forward with this horrendous pandemic that we're all either going stir crazy, suffocating, or just worried as hell about our money. But Dr. Fauci came out yesterday and talked about his fear of the antibody test not being as accurate as he would have liked. We do have a new series of antibody tests coming out that are going to be very, very accurate, pretty quick, and they're going to be able to be made by the millions. They're going to be pretty good tests, it sounds like, but they won't be out until mid-June. So, there's that. Meanwhile, we have a lot of states here in the country talking about reopening even before May. I feel like that is just not the right time. I don't mean to be an alarmist on this, but we really don't have evidence that we've reached a peak or that it's done being contagious or as contagious, and people are still getting it. And mind you, again, today is over basically 28,500 cases, new cases, and this is while most of the country shut down. What happens when they open it up? And these people are still roaming about. Um, and we're hearing all of this about reopening and getting back to normal, and trust me, no one wants that more than I do. But let's just talk about the elephant in the room. That was yesterday. Yesterday was the most deadly day for COVID-19 in America, with 2,405 deaths. And that's awful. That night, though, they're talking about reopening. What are we going to do to get back? The economy can wait a little bit. The government can work for us for a little bit. We can set up a temporary UBI for 4 to 6 months. We can get through all that, and that's really what we need to do. And stop just messing around with the idea of back to normal. There may not be a back to normal for a very, very long time. That's really, really bitter pill for a lot of people to swallow, but it's the reality. Now, I also bring that up because today, as I said, yesterday was the most deadly day for COVID-19 in America. Today, as of 9:50 p.m., we are at 4,793 deaths in America. Basically doubling yesterday. And we're talking about reopening. And guys, look, the cases are still really high. If the new cases were going down, then we could say, okay, unfortunately, a lot of people are dying that had it before, but we're under 20,000 cases a day. We're under 15,000 new cases. We're under whatever. We have to set some sort of standard, and we won't do it. And I think partially because a lot of people want to get back to work. And it's not the people who are hurting the most. The rich, the elites, they want to get they want to get Wall Street started back up again. They want to be making more money with their money. While there's a majority of us, like myself, I haven't experienced a shutdown. I'm sure a lot of you haven't either. You've been out working because we're quote unquote essential. Yet we're not getting any protection. We're not getting any extra money. We're not getting health care. We're not getting anything besides keeping the goddamn country going. Um, but so a couple other things I wanted to talk about with COVID-19 and that people are not talking about or I'm not hearing, and again, for good reason. I definitely want to make that clear. This is for good reason that this hasn't been reported. Um, so anyway, in South Korea, there are about 100 cases of people who had coronavirus and then they recovered. And 2 to 3 weeks later, came back. Now, it would suggest that maybe they got infected again. But that's not what the scientists and doctors believe. The scientists and doctors are theorizing that once infected with COVID-19, it could lay dormant in your body and then reactivate. For me, that's terrifying. I mean, that's like herpes. It doesn't ever really go away. Um, they talked about the implications of this and the fact that, well, essentially, it could be a situation where we have to get vaccines every 6 months if that happens, or treatment. I actually talked to a biochemist about this, and she had told me essentially the same thing, and went on to also mention that this isn't completely uncommon. There's a lot of viruses that do actually go dormant in your body and then um, can just reactivate whenever they want. And that's why often, especially like kids, get vaccines every year. It's not a huge concern, but it is something to be mindful of. And I asked her, well, would this affect making a vaccine? Would this affect the treatment process? And she said, no, with the treatment process. If the treatment works, then whatever, we just might have to be on the treatment for a long time. That might be something that we're taking for the rest of our lives if we get coronavirus. And that there would lead to other problems if the treatment isn't 100% healthy for us. If the treatment's pretty rough, it could be a situation with like radiation therapy, where eventually the treatment is going to kill you, um, which does cause more problems. But right now, she said that the main focus is on a clean treatment, and hopefully they can get there. But she did actually in this conversation tell me about something I didn't know about, has to do with COVID-19 and something that she was saying, as far as vaccine and treatment, whatever, the fact that it gets into your system and then goes dormant, maybe not as big of a problem as something else that's happening. And there's only been one case of this, and that's why there's not a lot of reporting about it, not a lot of people talking about it. Um, but where the coronavirus, COVID-19, I should say, has actually mutated. And it's only happened that they've been able to study and see it happen. They've only seen it happen once. Now, as she said, that doesn't mean it hasn't happened 1,000 times. It just means in the midst of all of this panic and this chaos, somebody was able to catch it and happened to notice that it had in fact mutated. And as she pointed out so many times in this little interview I had with her, that the science is very gunked up right now because not only are the hospitals and the people running with their heads cut off, so are the scientists. It's, there's a group of people who believe that we should be looking at it analytically, we should be studying it, we should be taking our time, doing the science things, so to speak. And then there's a group that believe we need to get to a treatment now. We need to be solving this problem now. And we don't have time to sit there and wait for things to mature. But so her whole thing with this, the mutation of the COVID-19 actually scared the shit out of me because she said, if this is more common than we think, or if this is something other than an outlier, if this can happen more often, then this makes a vaccine pretty much worthless. We wouldn't be able to get to one. And that is terrifying. That is incredibly terrifying. Because she brought up, the fact that if that were the case and it stayed true to form, then treatment really wouldn't help either. Treatment would just be delaying what's going to happen. You're just going to end up getting it again and again and again. There's no way to get rid of it, essentially. Um, that, yeah, some people would, there's going to be a few people, but that should be okay. But as you get older, it's going to catch up with you. This isn't something that's going to be gone in 2021, essentially. She said it'll most likely just be something that's here from now on. 2030, we're gonna know about COVID-19. But here was the good news on this version that did mutate, the strain that they found. So the part of the coronavirus, and I'm sure you've seen it before, it looks like a little ball with spikes. Well, the ball is called the envelope. Inside is the DNA of COVID-19. The little spikes are proteins. And those little spikes, essentially, those little proteins, they are the things that cling to your lungs. And that's what causes so much of the respiratory problems, the breathing problems, the issues that we're seeing with people dying from this. It's basically those little spikes. They interlock and they get stuck into your lungs. They build up and cause the fluid. And a vaccine, the way that it would work is it would work like a lock and key, and it would lock into the the proteins, and it would stop it from attaching to your lungs, essentially. Well, here's the good thing regarding the mutation. After I just scared the shit out of you, probably saying, "Hey, look, there's a mutation that found out that there's no vaccine. We're screwed." The interesting thing about when it mutated, it actually mutated weaker, essentially. The mutation actually drops most of the proteins, and then it's just the envelope. Yes, there's of course going to be proteins, but they're not spiked, so to speak. There is nothing for it to attach to. And if this was to, let's say, jump on a grand scale, she said, look, it would be probably less deadly than than the flu, than probably even the common cold, because of how it mutated and how it's not going to cause the respiratory problems. I found that really, really weird, honestly, because, and even talking to somebody who isn't as educated as she is, and I have no science background whatsoever. I didn't think the shape of the coronavirus actually mattered. I found that really interesting, but also, yeah, good to know that this mutation, if you hear about it, those little spiky things are gone. It can attach to your lungs. You can breathe. It shouldn't be a problem. It shouldn't be any worse than than the flu, which is bad enough, but and like she said, probably not even that bad, considering the flu would actually be worse on your lungs. Now again, and I told her I would say this, none of that is conclusive. Absolutely none of that. It's all theory. It's what on this one mutation, it's what she saw. Doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that it's not an outlier. It doesn't mean it can't mutate. It doesn't mean that it will mutate again. It doesn't mean that that mutation itself is the prototype of the next mutation. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means that these are things that are stories that have been reported and that I took the time to ask somebody who was way more educated than I did. And I wanted to talk about it a little bit because I've been wondering about these stories and I haven't seen anyone talk about them. Anyway, I hope some of that was informative. I hope it gave you some idea about what's going on. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you guys think about reopening? Is it time we reopen? Should we be planning on that? Is this way too early? Do we really need to think this through? Is it something you worry about? Do you care? I'm really curious how many people actually worry about this. I live in Kansas, and a majority of Kansans don't give a fuck. This has not really affected us at all. In my town alone, yesterday I think was the biggest day. Here, I'll just look up the numbers real quick. Um, yeah, yes, today is actually the biggest day of new cases, and we have a whopping five new cases, and honestly, that's huge. We had one yesterday. Many days that have gone by in the last few weeks, we've just had zero. Um, that's where we're at, and these people around here don't care. It's not a big deal. So I love your input on that. Anyway, thank you guys so much. You guys stay safe. Have a great day. Take care.